One of these standard rhetorical tactics to take an event and try to inflate its menace is the old, it could have been a lot worse strategy. I always laugh when I see this because it's sort of an effort to say, well, it wasn't an insurrection, but it could have been an insurrection. It wasn't a coup, but it could have been a coup. It wasn't a riot, but it was heading that way. And here's, we see this now with January 6th. As the facts collapse all around the left, they want to continue with the overheated rhetoric. So now we've gone into this sort of the what if mode. And here's the latest, you can only expect AOC would try to get out front on this one. And sure enough, here's a very amusing audio clip of AOC in theatrical mode, as always, talking about the fact that, well, it could have been worse. Listen.
This was an all-out attempted coup. Mike Pence was taken out of the Senate chamber something like 60 seconds before these terrorists and insurrectionists got into the Senate chamber. 60 seconds could have meant potentially the difference between what we have right now and a martial state.
Could have. It could have. It really could have. It could have been a martial state. Well, let's think about what that just 60 seconds separated us from total disaster. And we could have been in a very different situation. What was that? Well, you know the guy with the horns and the animal skins? His name is Jacob Chansley. Right now, we could have been living under a regime, a martial law regime with a dictator. The shaman guy, Jacob Chansley. Her Chansley. This is AOC. Hard to say if she's really being serious, because this is a woman who sort of always hovers on the kind of edge of lunacy, and there's a little element of parody so that it's difficult to separate. But, I think we have to say that she believes it. Why? Because she's a loon. Now, all of this is context for the Democrats' so-called January 6th commission. And this passed the House, by the way. And then what's disgraceful is that a bunch of Republicans, 35 of them, voted for this commission, knowing that the commission is a complete joke, that the commission's job is to create a narrative. And by the way, think of how horrifying this is. The commission may be a joke, but the narrative they're trying to reinforce is being used to justify political prosecutions, keeping Trump supporters in solitary confinement, literally torturing them, even though they've been convicted of nothing, criminalizing dissent, encouraging a regime of censorship throughout the country. All of this is hanging on the January 6th narrative. And these Republicans are complicit in supporting that narrative because they know that that's what the Democrats are doing with this commission. It will be staffed by Democrats. The whole idea here is to reinforce this fake narrative and use the narrative as a bludgeon against Republicans. So why would they do this? I think these are people really who have to be run out of the Republican Party. They have to be primaried, challenged, and defeated, every one of them. I'll read a couple of names. Liz Cheney, big surprise. This woman is so out of control, it's not even funny. She's just maddened, I think, with hatred of Trump. Representative Adam Kinzinger, well, yes, of course. Maria Elvira Salazar, Republican of Florida. A little bit of surprise to me, but maybe this is something I didn't know about her. And the list goes on. Representative Tom Reed of New York, Tony Gonzalez of Texas, Chris Smith, Republican of New Jersey, 35 of them. And there's a little piece of good news in all this, and the good news is McConnell. Now, McConnell, of course, had himself kind of gone along with some pretty incendiary rhetoric about January 6th, but it looks like McConnell has kind of come to his political senses. He's come to realize that the Democrats are not content with saying that this was a breach of the Capitol, some people broke laws and they need to be held accountable. No, this is an effort to turn this into 9/11, turn this into another Oklahoma City bombing, in Biden's own words, the worst attack on our government since the Civil War. And so McConnell's realized that this is really not some kind of objective investigation. In fact, I'm quoting McConnell now. if it's going to go forward, it needs to be clearly balanced and not tilted one way or the other, so we have an objective evaluation. I think McConnell's realized that's not happening, and so he's come out against the January 6th Commission, which, very interestingly, probably sounds the death knell for it. Now, the good thing about McConnell, we've got to appreciate his virtues, is that McConnell is not the same as McCarthy in the House. The House leadership, it appears, is weak. You can't lose. You can't have a strong, unified Republican House and lose 35 Republicans. It's one thing if you lost 3 or 4 of them. They're incorrigible. You can't win them all. But when 35 Republicans defect, even though that's a small percentage of the total, that's bad news. I don't think McConnell will have those kinds of defections on the Senate side. And I think the press realizes this. He has a headline in the Washington Post. McConnell comes out against January 6th Commission, imperiling its chances of becoming law. Well, imperiling here is a polite word for kind of killing it. Why? Because for this commission to become law, it has to go past the filibuster. In order to go past the filibuster, it needs 60 votes. That means it needs 10 Republicans. McConnell's opposition basically guarantees there's not going to be 10 Republicans. Now, let's remember there were 7 Senate Republicans who did vote to impeach Trump. It's possible that all 7, although perhaps not all 7, will vote for the January 6th Commission. But even if they did, they would still need 3 more votes, which evidently aren't there. So it doesn't look like, at this point, we're going to have a January 6th Commission, which is a very good thing because it's not a real commission. It's not a real inquiry. It's ultimately a sort of, well, you can use the word, it's a trumped-up operation intended to reinforce a fake narrative, and that narrative then used to justify some very bad things.